Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Waterloo Council meeting for Monday, May 30th, 2022. Continuing on, let's begin with a roll call, beginning with Ward 1, please.
Good evening. Councillor Hanmer, present.
Waterloo present.
Councillor Freeman, present.
Councillor Bassick, present.
Councillor Henry, present.
Councillor Bonigo, present.
And Mayor's here too. That's who's here. Councillor Veith not with us tonight. Disclosure pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Hearing none. We actually have two formal meetings on the docket tonight, so I'll jump right into the first one. And if you would like to speak at the public planning meetings tonight, please call the clerk's office at 519-747-8705. That's 519-747-8705. This is a formal public meeting to consider zoning bylaw amendment Z2005 2744375 Ontario Limited for the addresses of 314 to 316 Batavia Place and 295 to 297 Albert Street. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should contact the planner, Rita Zylock, at 519-747-8650 or at rita.zylock@waterloo.ca. That's spelled RITA.SZILOCK@waterloo.ca. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given as soon as I turn down the volume on this speaker.
Notice was advertised in the Waterloo Chronicle on May 12, 2022. It was mailed or emailed on May 10th, 2022 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, to public agencies, to all persons who signed in or spoke at the informal public meeting held on January 18, 2021, and to all persons who requested further notice.
Thank you very much. The planner will now give a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Rita.
Good evening, Mayor Jaworski, members of council, members of the public. This is a formal public meeting for 314, 316 Batavia Place and 295, 297 Albert Street. Zoning bylaw amendment Z2005. The application was submitted by a numbered company represented here tonight by Trevor Hawkins from MHBC Planning. Next slide, please. The subject site is located within the Northdale neighborhood. It is a through lot with frontage on both Batavia Place and Albert Street, situated between Hickory Street west to the south and Columbia Street west to the north. There is a significant grade change between the Albert Street frontage and the Batavia Place frontage, with Albert Street being approximately 1 story higher than Batavia Place. The site is a consolidation of 4 lots currently containing single detached dwellings. It is surrounded by single detached dwellings to the north, south, and northwest. A 6-story apartment building is located to the west, and 3-story stacked townhomes known as Ivy Towns 2 is located to the east across Albert Street. Next slide, please. These are conceptual perspectives of the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to build a 6-story apartment building on the site containing 100 residential units with 110 bedrooms, 27 vehicle parking spaces, and 28 bike parking spaces. Next slide, please. This is a conceptual site plan of the proposed development. The vehicular entrance to the site will be limited to Batavia Place, while pedestrian access will be available from both Batavia Place and Albert Street. Next slide, please. In terms of the official plan, the subject site is located within Special Policy Area 45. It is designated low-density residential in Northdale, which allows for apartment buildings, a maximum density of 250 beds per hectare. It also allows for bonusing up to a maximum density of 600 beds per hectare, subject to council approval, of course, and a maximum height of 6 stories. Next slide, please. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the subject site is zoned holding residential Northdale 6, which permits apartment buildings, maximum density of 250 beds per hectare, and a maximum building height of 21.5 meters. Next slide, please. In evaluating this zoning bylaw amendment application, staff considered whether the proposed development was context sensitive and fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. Staff evaluated the application against existing planning policy framework, and staff considered comments received from commenting agencies, the public, and members of council. Next slide, please. This table breaks down the site-specific zoning provisions as recommended by staff, shown in purple, while the RN6 zone requirements and the applicant's requested amendments are shown in gray. Staff is recommending that the maximum street line setback along Batavia Place be increased to 9.7 meters to accommodate the curve in the cul-de-sac. That the maximum canopy encroachment along Batavia Place be increased to 1.6 meters, whereas 1 meter is permitted currently. That the first story height along both Albert Street and Batavia Place be reduced to accommodate the design of the proposed building, as it contends with the significant grade change between Albert Street and Batavia Place. Next slide, please. Staff is also recommending that the required residential parking spaces be reduced by 1 space. Also to allow a small portion of the structured parking along Batavia Place to not be located behind building floor area. And lastly, that a maximum density of 344 beds per hectare or an additional 30 bedrooms be permitted in exchange for community benefits. Next slide, please. So in exchange for the additional 30 bedrooms on the subject site, staff is recommending that the applicant enter into a Section 37 bonusing agreement with the city and contribute a total of $480,000 towards affordable housing in the city and or to contribute to the city's affordable housing grant program. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff recommend that council approve zoning bylaw amendment application Z2005 for 314, 316 Batavia Place and 295, 297 Albert Street in accordance with Section 8 of Staff Report IPPW 2022-028, and that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign the Section 37 bonusing agreement, which is in draft form at the back of the staff report. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Rita. I'll just pause for a moment to see if any hands go up. First up is Councillor Bonnegar. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. Thanks for all the information, Rita. I was just struck by the number of bicycle parking spots, like for 110 bedrooms, 28 bicycle parking, like 28 bike spots seems quite low. Do we have any guidelines on this that we can look to as a council? Is this something that forms part of the application before us, or is that just something that we would need to perhaps discuss and encourage with the developer?
So the application does meet the required bicycle parking space requirements under the zoning bylaw. This particular zone requires 0.25 bicycle parking spaces per bedroom, which comes out to be 28 bike parking spaces. That's really all I can say. The only way to change that would be to change the zoning bylaw requirement.
And just for my information, does the bicycle parking requirement, is that dependent on the car bike, like the vehicle space provisions as well? Like if there's less parking, does it therefore lead to the requirement for more bike parking? Or are those things untied?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Bonagor, in this instance, they are untied.
Okay, that's helpful information. Thank you.
Next up, I have Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. With regard to the bike parking, my understanding is that the amount provided would be, is it Class A parking? Can you remind me, Rita? And that tenants could still, if they chose, bring their bikes into their units. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, to the councillor. Yes, you're right. Tenants can bring their bikes into their unit if they choose to. There are 24 indoor or type A bike parking spaces and 4 type B bike parking spaces, which would be, at grade outside.
Okay, thank you. I had a question with regard to the street line setback, and we're recommending a maximum of 9.7. So does that hold the proponent to 9.7, or is there a range? Because I see the applicant's revised proposal was requesting 8.8, and I'm just trying to understand whether they could, like, kind of the benefit of that extra information. I'm not sure that I've seen this maximum per se in the past.
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor, if I could please go to slide 4, I can explain. So there is a range. The minimum setback requirement on Batavia is 3 meters and the maximum is 6 meters. So that's the range. And the purpose of that is to ensure that the building addresses the street, but is not too far from the street. If you look at the site plan, I'm not sure if you can scroll up to slide 4, it is labeled with the numbers, but it would show you that there's a curve at the end of the bulb here, and the center of this building does meet that requirement. It is between 3 meters and 6 meters. It's the northern corner and the southern corner that doesn't meet the requirement, and the applicant asked for the 8.8 meter setback based on the northern corner, but after staff reviewed the application and reviewed the site plan, we noticed that the southern corner was actually a little bit further, and that's why that recommendation.
Okay, that makes total sense to me. I can see it. I've got the site plan up on my screen at home. And so the difference was not it was just that when we actually measured it, we actually identified that it's a little bit deeper. So that makes sense to me. I knew it was associated with the building facing the street. I just was trying to understand why those differences occurred. So I think that was the extent to my questions. Thank you for your help.
At this point in time, I see no further questions of staff, so thank you very much, Rita. As a reminder, if you're in person watching, would like to receive further notices application, you can contact Rita at 519-747-8650. If you'd like to speak tonight at the meeting, please call the clerk's office at 519-747-8705. I'll now invite our registered delegate to come forward, and let me just see, what do I have here? Oh, Trevor. Welcome, Trevor. Trevor Hawkins, MHBC. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Good evening, members of council, and thank you to Rita for her presentation. I'll be brief because I think she's covered most things off. This is just an image of the building as seen from the apartment building next door on Batavia Place. You can see the glazing along the main floor, the 4.5 meter height, the canopy projection, and then the entry from Batavia Place into the parking area. Next slide. And this is the view from Albert Street. So the grade difference, you can sort of see it on the left-hand side of the image. It drops a full story so that the parking as seen from Batavia Place is not seen from Albert Street. And the architects, Walter Fady, have done a great job of creating a focal point along the Albert Street frontage, which is very pedestrian focused. There's no vehicular entrance there. So the lobby entrance area is 4.5 meters, and then there's a portion of the building that's 4.5 meters as well. But because the first floor on Albert Street becomes the second floor really from Batavia Place, it wasn't possible to carry the whole 4.5 meters all the way across the building on the second floor, what really is the second floor. And then next slide will show that a little bit more clearly, I think. This is the cross section. So we see on the left-hand side, the Batavia Place with the canopy, and one of the requests is just that encroachment, partial encroachment of the canopy. It's only actually a portion of the canopy because of the curved nature of the street. And then you can see that the first floor on Albert Street is actually the second floor as seen from Batavia Place. And so that's the nature of some of the site specifics is directly related to that. And the owner is certainly supportive of the financial contribution to the Affordable Housing Grant Fund. And we've worked with staff on the drafting of the agreement. Next slide. And then I think this just gives a bit more context to the setback from Batavia. So the arrow at the bottom there is pointing to the measured setback from the curved part of Batavia to the corner of that building. So most of the building is between 3 and 6 meters, but as the curves peel away from the building face, the setbacks get greater, and that's the nature of that request. And then there's that one parking space that I'm pointing to with the arrow that sort of is in behind building mass, but projects slightly beyond because it's the move-in space. It's slightly deeper than a normal parking space. So it's just poking a little bit beyond the building mass, but there'll be landscaping to screen it from the street as well. Next slide. So we're here in support of staff's recommendation. We've been working diligently with staff through this process and through some of the site plan details. We feel it's a great fit for the neighborhood. It's a terrific complement to the building next door. It addresses both the streets despite some of the unique challenges of the grade difference. It has active frontage and active uses along both street frontages. The proposed 30 extra bedrooms is well within the scope of the zoning and the official plan that's permitted. It's appropriate for the lands in this location. And a lot of the site-specific regulations that are being recommended by staff are minor or very technical in nature and directly related to either the curved nature of Batavia Place or the grade changes on this particular site and the building design. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Trevor. I'll just pause for a moment while I wait to see if any hands go up virtually. Councillor Bonnegar, please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Jaworski. Thanks, Trevor, for all this information. It may come as no surprise. I'm about to ask you about bicycle parking. Just given the proximity of and the location of the development, I can imagine that bikes will be a key piece of travel infrastructure for residents. So I'm just wondering, to Councillor Freeman's point, you're providing like 24 parking spots inside the building. Should a resident, that's not a huge amount for 110 beds. So should a resident wish to have their bike in their apartment, I'm just curious, do the elevators and the internal makeup of the building and the allocation of balconies and things, does it provide space inside the units for people to park their bikes and to get them from the front door to the unit?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Bonnegar, certainly you could enter the building, use the elevator, and get to your unit with your bike. I would encourage you to have a light bike if you were doing that. And then within the unit, there's space within the unit to certainly rest a bike against one of the interior walls. Some of the units will have balconies if that was where you were inclined to put your bike, but I would imagine most people would keep the bike indoor. And so there'd be space in your unit to do that. The units would have utility rooms. They'll have walls between the living room and the bathroom where you could rest your bike against the wall. And then, we've designed the site so that someone on Albert Street has a direct path from Albert Street into the bike secure room. So there was quite a bit of thought put into making sure that cyclists could get easily into the building, into the dedicated bike parking. And then if you were a cyclist inclined to take it up to your unit, you could certainly do that with the elevator and hallway system.
And should there be an increase in demand, do you imagine that there's easy locations outdoors for additional parking if it was needed?
Oh yeah, we've allocated some bike parking along Albert Street because we thought that might be where most cyclists who were visiting the building would be coming from, but there'd be opportunities to add some along Batavia Place, for example, and as well outside in the landscape area, sort of near the outdoor amenity area.
Okay, thank you. The reason I'm asking is just as we're trying to help people use cars less, it's just really, really helpful if there's the infrastructure for alternates. Yeah, so I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Trevor, for your advice on light bikes. I don't see any other questions, Trevor, so thank you very much. And I will now check with the clerk's office to see if we've received any additional delegations. And bad news, team, nobody has called in. So with that, as the clerk informs me, there are no further speakers. This formal public meeting is concluded, and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. And I'll look to the ward councillor. I'll turn over to Councillor Henry, is ready to move along with Bill 73 wording.
Yes, and before I read that out, I'll just say I wanted to thank staff and Mr. Hawkins and the applicant for listening to the comments that we made, the questions that we asked during the informal public meeting. I do see some significant attention is being paid to the Batavia frontage and shifting the building around so the parking is in behind, except for the occasional move and other matters that were able to be resolved through this. And I think the contribution to the affordable housing program in some fashion that we'll be able to determine will be very helpful in creating the largest offering we possibly can to really drive that forward. And I would just hope through Mr. Hawkins to the applicant that this is a project that will move forward rather quickly. There are certainly 3 other projects along Albert Street that seem to have stalled with boarded up housing and have not moved. So I hope this is one that moves in short order. So with that, I will move this motion and read it as follows. Whereas Council has considered all written and oral submissions from the public and stakeholders, and whereas Council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore be it resolved, 1, that Council approves staff report IPPW 2022-028, 2, that Council approves zoning bylaw amendment Z-20-05, 2744375 Ontario Limited for 314 to 316 Batavia Place and 295 to 297 Albert Street, in accordance with Section 8 of Staff Report IPPW 2022-028, and 3, that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign the Section 37 Planning Act Agreement for Z-20-05 substantially in the form of the draft agreement contained in Appendix F to Staff Report IPPW 2022-028 to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and the City Solicitor.
Excellent, and thank you for that. The contribution of $480,000 or so to the affordable housing program here with our grant program, I think is a good day for the general citizens of Waterloo. I do have a seconder in Councillor Freeman, and I'll just pause a moment to see if there's any debate. Seeing none, I will begin the vote with Ward 1, please.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Councillor Bodley in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Councillor Vasek in favor.
Councillor Henry in favor.
Councillor Bonagor in favour.
And the mayor's in favor too. That carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Rita. Moving ahead to our second item of the night. And again, a reminder, if you'd like to speak at the public planning meeting, please call the clerk's office at 519-747-8705 to be added to the list of delegates tonight. This is a formal public meeting to consider official plan amendment application number 35, Northgate Land Corporation and Gabriella Groff, the southwest corner of Conservation Drive and Beaver Creek Road. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should contact the planner, Laura Dewar, at 519-747-6108 or at laura.dewar@waterloo.ca, and that's spelled LAURA.DEWAR@waterloo.ca. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of this meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the Waterloo Chronicle on May 12th, 2022. It was mailed or emailed on May 10th, 2022 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, to public agencies, and to all persons who requested further notice. No informal public meeting was held.
Thank you. The planner will now give a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Laura. And we're just awaiting technical difficulties.
Sorry, can you hear me?
There we go. That sounds good.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
I just a correction. There was an informal public meeting held back in March, and I'm sorry. Is the sound better?
Yeah, no, you sound great, Laura.
Okay. There was an informal public meeting. It was held back in March. I do not have a staff report this year. Sorry, I do not have a presentation for council this evening, but I am recommending that council approve staff report IPPW 2022-025, that council adopt official plan amendment number 35 as set out in section 6 of the staff report, and that council requests that the regional municipality of Waterloo approve official plan amendment number 35 in accordance with the staff report. I would be happy to answer any questions that that council may have.
Yeah, I do recall the informal as well, or at least I had recalled it, so that's good. I'll just pause for a moment while we wait to see if any hands go up. And I am not seeing any. And so with that, thank you very much, Laura. If you'd like to speak at tonight's meeting, please call the clerk's office at 519-747-8705. I will now call upon our registered delegate to speak, beginning with Mr. Trevor Hawkins of MHBC. Welcome back, Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Further to Laura's comment, I didn't have a presentation either. I think we're supportive of staff's recommendation. We think the permission for an additional couple meters of height in locations such as this is something that is appropriate for these lands and something that council may wish to consider through the official plan review process as well, just to give a little bit more flexibility and opportunities for housing choice. So we're fully supportive of the recommendation, and we look forward to working with the region towards its approval.
Yeah, thank you very much, Trevor. Yeah, very, very nice and simple, a little bit more housing, a little bit more choice. I'll just see if there's any questions for you. Councillor Bodley, please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Jaworski. I'm going to have some questions of staff later just to give some, I guess, some airtime, I guess, to the public comment that we received from a resident who lives on Beaver Creek Road. But in advance of that, I wanted to ask a question to Mr. Hawkins. Is there, understanding that that much of the development was approved long ago and is still under appeal at the OLT, and so not knowing exactly where how everything's going to play out and timing and things like that, can you speak to, is there an access point to these properties in particular planned off of Beaver Creek Road, or are all of the access points going to be more internal to the site coming off of Conservation Drive? If you could provide some context to that, I would appreciate it.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, if I understand your question, you're asking whether there's access to the blocks that may contain this type of housing directly from those streets. Is that the question?
Sorry, to clarify, just generally, will there be any access points into or roads that connect onto Beaver Creek? But yes, I mean, if there are access points for driveways or private parking for these developments, that would be appreciated as well too. And understand totally that with the development still being at the OLT, that maybe this is not a question you can answer at this time, but any insight you may have, I would appreciate.
Certainly, I can tell you that the district plan envisioned 2 access points from Beaver Creek Road into these lands, and 3 access points from Conservation Drive into these lands. So that's contemplated in the district plan and the draft plan, sort of, notwithstanding all of the process that it's involved in, is sort of following along those lines. There's no driveways directly accessed from either of those roads, though.
That's perfect. Thank you for the clarification. That's it for me, Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you. And I see no further questions, Trevor. So thank you very much for tonight's 2 presentations. Moving along, I will just check to see with the clerk's office if we've received any phone calls. And we have none, but I see Councillor Bodley, please go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. I'll be happy to move the motion and read the official piece there in a second. I was just hoping again to give some airplay to the comment from a resident who lives on Beaver Creek Road. And this will be a question that's sort of mixed in with a comment as well too. Understanding that, as I said, this development is still sort of a ways away, and that it's under appeal with the OLT, and that there's sort of some unanswered questions about the whole development in general. I do appreciate, excuse me, that there will be some changes for the residents who do live on Beaver Creek and the residents who live on Conservation Drive and in some of these adjacent areas as well too. And understanding that this is sort of one of the last sort of greenfield development areas in the city of Waterloo, and I think from what I've seen of the development, that for the most part it's really well planned, and it's got a lot of housing choice and mix, as Mayor Jaworski has stated. And I'm generally supportive of the changes that are being proposed here. I do hear from residents that live on Beaver Creek Road towards the south part of the development of the street now about misbehaving drivers, going too fast and not being very cautious as they're going down the street there, driving well above the speed limit. And I know that with the redevelopment of this entire property, when it does come forward, that there is proposal for the development charges in part to go towards the reconstruction of Beaver Creek Road to make it far more pedestrian friendly, to make it far more friendly for cyclists, and to hopefully, and what I want to ask the question of, to hopefully work in traffic calming proposals directly into the street, so that although there may be more cars on the street as this development brings thousands of residents into the area, that it's actually going to be a way for us to improve the street design to prevent the types of behavior that or mitigate the types of behavior that we're seeing. Can I ask a question to planning staff about whether that is still the case that that Beaver Creek Road will eventually, when this goes forward, be reconstructed, and
that we have had this.
oh, sorry.
Sorry about that, Royce. I'm just trying to figure out the informal here.
Sorry. Whether it is still the case that Beaver Creek Road is to be reconstructed, and whether that will be a public process where residents, such as the one that provided public comment, will be, there will be a process for them to express their opinions about how the road gets reconstructed to mitigate traffic speeds on the street. That's my question. Thank you.
Sure. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. It isn't a public process. In fact, the designs for the road reconstruction has been substantially completed by an outside consultant for the city. So I can tell you what I did tell this resident, and what I did tell the resident was that the city will be reconstructing that section of Beaver Creek Road between the Laurel Creek Reservoir and the intersection with Conservation Drive to an urban cross-section standard. So it will have a sidewalk, it'll have a multi-use pathway, bike lanes, new underground services, and a new road surface. And then that section of Conservation Drive between the intersection of Beaver Creek Road and Herbsville Road, it's also being reconstructed to an urban cross-section standard. Same thing with sidewalks, multi-use pathway, underground services, new road surface. It's also making some improvements to the road alignment and the elevation. There's some sort of sightline issues there that are being corrected. There's going to be the roundabout at the intersection of Beaver Creek Road and Conservation Drive as well. The city will be undertaking the work starting likely in late 2023, with the majority of construction happening in 2024 and possibly into 2025. So Beaver Creek Road will go first. And all of these works need to be completed really prior to the development of, the subject lands and other lands in the Beaver Creek district. Yeah, so and then I provided the resident with the project manager. Caroline Amiot is the project manager, and just provided her contact information in case there was more details or things she wanted to reach out to Ms. Amiot on regarding the reconstruction works. I hope that's sort of the details you might have been looking for around that project and some of the works being done, the timing, and just to clarify that, yeah, it's not a public process at this point.
Nope, that's perfect. I appreciate that, Laura. And I may reach out to staff to review the proposal there as well too, so I have a better understanding of it for future residents. My understanding is that this is a non-routine project, that is capital project that will eventually come back to council for approval. So there will at least be an opportunity to provide some feedback and input at that stage. Is that correct, Laura?
I should defer to others just to answer that. I believe that the funding was already approved. I think a lot of the approvals are already in place, but perhaps I can defer to someone else to answer that specifically.
And we'll turn over to Mr. Ormston. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Through you to Councillor Bodley. Yes, Councillor Bodley, you're correct. Before the roads are constructed, we will be returning to council with approval for the actual tendering. That said, the designs are substantially complete, as Ms. Stewart noted, and they were completed through a public process, a Schedule C class environmental assessment process. But that said, they're in the detailed design phase that we're in now, and pending some of the last details of the Beaver Creek Meadows plan of subdivision, there will be an opportunity to look at driveways and things like that. And I can assure council that the design will be a modern design, accounting for traffic calming, things like lighting, better signage, as Ms. Stewart noted, better grade lines and sight lines and things like that, plus an opportunity to separate cyclists and pedestrians from the travel portion of the road. So the design will be very comprehensive. It'll consider all modern standards. And you're certainly correct, Councillor. When it comes back, there'll be an opportunity for some last minute commentary, but generally speaking, it'll be the tendering phase, just really to deal with the costs and making sure that it's in alignment with the capital plan at that point. Thanks, Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ormson. Appreciate that. That's it for me. Do you want me to read the piece there now, Mayor Jaworski?
I'm just going to turn it back to the clerk, and then I have to declare this public meeting closed. So I'm going to turn it back to Natalia. One moment while we switch our microphones.
We apologize. Thank you, Mayor. We apologize. There was an informal public meeting held, and the communications were delivered to all the persons who attended the meeting on March the 21st, 2022. Thank you, Mayor.
As the clerk informs me, there are no further speakers. This formal public meeting is concluded, and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. I will turn it over to Ward Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. I'm happy to move the motion here, and I will read it out. Whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions from the public and stakeholders, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore be it resolved, 1, that council approves staff report IPPW 2022-025, 2, that council adopt official plan amendment number 35 as set out in section 6 of IPPW 2022-025, and 3, that council requests that the regional municipality of Waterloo approve official plan amendment number 35 in accordance with IPPW 2022-025.
Excellent. And I'll just look to see if we can possibly dig up a seconder. Oh, your neighbor to the south, the Gold Coast of Waterloo, Councillor Hanmer, is willing to second it. And I'll just see if there's any discussion. Hearing none, let's begin the vote with Ward 1, please.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Councillor Bodley in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Councillor Vassick in favor.
Councillor Henry in favor.
Councillor Bonagor in favor.
And the mayor's in favor too. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you very much, Trevor. And I guess that's it. So with that, we move along. Skipping forward, item 17 is communications and correspondence. This will be relevant in the near future as we do receive communications on what other councils are doing, and every now and then we see something, we say, hey, we'd like to support that. And we'll more on that momentarily. We don't have any unfinished business. Item 19, questions. Does anyone have any questions of staff to pose? Hearing none, I will move along to new business. We have one significant item, but I'm going to assume these other ones are less time consuming. So we'll go to Councillor Freeman, then Councillor Hanmer. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. I just wanted to put a shout out to the Optimist Club of Waterloo. They hosted 2 bike rodeos this past weekend for students. One was in my ward at Christ Lutheran Church in the parking lot, and the other was at Westvale Public School. And also McPhail's were great. They came and did bike tune-ups and so on for participants. They had good weather. It was a great addition to our community.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving over to Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Mayor. And the other part of the shout out to the Optimist Club was in my ward in Westvale. They also did a bike parade and tune-ups, and McPhail's was on site as well. So lots of happening activities. It was garage sale season as well as a general cleanup at all of the home associations throughout the ward. So lots of great volunteer activities and people just really happy to be outside and doing things and seeing their neighbors.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Hanmer. And it's good to see everybody supporting active transportation. And I'll just look to see if Councillor Vasic would like to have a say regarding something that, a motion from the City of Cambridge that interested us.
Oh yeah, for sure. Are we done new business? Or is this new business?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, so yours is new business, and so we'll cover it here, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, I was excited to receive an email. I mean, I think we all did and saw that Councillor Hamilton in Cambridge put forward a motion to support free public transportation on election days. And I think there's a general sentiment that we want more people out to elections. I took a quick look today in our voter turnout. The average was 34.4% last election, 2018, locally for City of Waterloo Council. I didn't crunch any other numbers. But that means that there are 65% of people eligible to vote who aren't voting, or of course there are probably administrative glitches with voters list as well, but still low. So we want more people out. We want greater diversity of voices and experience to reflect our democracy. And there's lots of reasons why people might be disengaged from politics, but making elections more accessible is one way we might be able to help increase the voter turnout a little bit. The city has worked even before this council term on making voting more accessible by offering choice the day of through super vote locations, so people can vote at their polling location or at a super vote location. But people still need to be able to get there, and the round trip cost on public transportation can be prohibitive. So, I mean, imagine needing to make a decision between bus fare to vote and possibly lunch that day. So that's why I think it would be such a great reason to follow Cambridge's lead and advocate to the region of Waterloo to provide free transportation for elections in future. So, so I have a little motion here to follow with the Cambridge motion. And
hold on. I'm not sure. Do we waive notice motion now? Well, first we have to see the motion.
Sorry, totally forgot about that.
Hold on. Hold on. I'm just chatting with Natalia to see. First we should see the motion, right? Oh, okay. So I think people understand what's going on here. So I'd look for some council members. I know Councillor Hanmer was keen on this as well. I'd be looking for someone to waive notice of motion, and we can take the vote on that, so we can discuss this topic tonight. Moved by Councillor Hanmer to waive notice of motion, seconded by Councillor Bonagor. And with that, let's do the vote, beginning with Ward 1, please.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
In favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Councillor Henry in favor.
Councillor Bonagor in favor.
And I'm in favor too. Turning it back to you, Councillor Vasic, with respect to your motion that supports the one from City of Cambridge, Scott Hamilton.
Sure. So, I mean, it's pretty much the same. There's just a slight, like the wording is slightly different, and therefore be it resolved. Do you want me to read it or should we put it on the screen?
Just one moment. I'll just see if, do we have it here?
Yeah, that's the same one. There it is.
Yeah, and just for all the people who are on YouTube who might want to hear it, could you read it out, please?
Yeah, for sure. That the City of Waterloo support the May 17th, 2022 motion passed by the City of Cambridge and request the Region of Waterloo consider free public transportation on voting day for the municipal and school board election to make it more accessible for voters to access polling stations on voting day and to consider the same for future provincial and federal elections.
Thank you. And I would say I happened to run into Scott Hamilton when I was at the Bridgeport Cafe uptown about a week and a bit ago. And we had an opportunity to chat about this. And he certainly realizes that this is, short notice for the region. And the region will have to take it to the region to have the region consider it. But I think what really struck me as I thought through this is we, as lower tier municipalities who do not have a transit system, we do have a clerk department, and all 7 lower tiers run the elections for the essentially for the upper tier for the regional election as well. So where we're putting effort and costs into the election, I was originally concerned that it would look like maybe the regional level is trying to do something to curry favor to get people to vote for their incumbents. But the reality is we're already doing an investment here at the lower tier levels, and this would be a good way, and following the footsteps of some other municipalities that have also done something similar to encourage people to vote, and just really to help people out, as Councillor Vasic said. It's a little thing to do, but for some people it could make quite a difference. As I think you all know, we run some super vote sites and some popular sites like Waterloo City Hall. So some people may decide to hop on the LRT and come vote at Waterloo City Hall, and it just makes it more convenient. It is accessible in every sense of the word, and we know that we have certainly high accessibility standards here. And it just makes it could make a world of change for some people, and anything that helps more people get out to vote, the better. Any commentary from council that somebody would like to weigh in? Councillor Bonagord and Councillor Hammer, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. I just want to concur, really, that I think this is a great idea, and I think it also makes a great first step. I was at a workshop recently looking at the future of sustainable transportation in the region, and one thing that kept coming up again and again was the need for public transit to be free, particularly for children and youth. And at least having free transportation on voting day as a start, I would hope, that means single parents who can't leave their kids at home can still get out and vote. If they can't make it during the day, during school hours, or if their children are too young, this would remove a barrier for some people who might just face some difficult logistics and a cost that others may not be bearing to get to the polling booth. So I just wanted to say I think this is a good idea, and I would hope that it's a first step to making all of our transit more equitable in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to Councillor Hammer. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I too am really excited about this possibility, and because it does add one more opportunity and one more way that people can be participating in our democratic processes, and by being inclusive of provincial, federal, and municipal elections, and that being a way that we can get people to exercise their right to vote. I think this is a good first step as well. I do have a comment about the motion, Mayor, so do you want me to make it now or later? I think there's something missing.
Yeah, please go ahead, because I think we're imminently voting on it. I don't see, other than clerk has a comment for us, so please go ahead.
Okay, perhaps we'll call this a friendly amendment or minor amendment. The very last line, I believe, should say, and to consider the same for future municipal, provincial, and federal elections. Early on in the motion, it just refers to the, which could be inferred to be just this one coming. And I think our key is that we want it to be going forward as well.
That seems reasonable. Councillor Vasek?
Oh yeah, for sure. Great. Thanks, Councillor Hanmer.
Great. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Clerk Julie Scott, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And through the chair to council, we appreciate you bringing this motion forward. Accessibility for election planning is really critical to our team. And sometimes in order to find facilities that meet our physical accessibility requirements, those locations can be quite a distance from electors. Holding supervote locations provides that convenience factor. So if there is a particular facility that is more convenient for public transportation, it may be easier to get to that supervote location. And in addition, the Waterloo City Centre or City Hall supervote location, we will have interpreter service available for both American Sign Language and over 300 languages other than English on voting day. So that's certainly a location that we would want to encourage members of our public to attend, but it does require that added expense of transportation to get here. And in speaking with a supportive housing group last week, they were very hopeful that the region would consider this request because it will make a difference for the residents that live in that supportive housing. And happy to answer any questions, but I wanted to add those points for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we all can think of elections in the past where you think this might only help a handful of people get to the ballot box. But I think we can all think of elections of the recent past where elections are won by a handful of votes. And so every vote does matter. And so if we can get a few more people out to vote, it can make a difference. Not seeing anything further. I will call the vote beginning with Ward 1, please.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Councillor Bodley in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Councillor Henry in favor.
Councillor Bonagor in favor. And Jen, we didn't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, weird. Okay. Councillor Vasek very much in favor. Thank you, everyone, and excellent additional comments.
Thank you. And the mayor's in favor too. That carries unanimously. I think that's a slate of good work right there. And I will pass along our thanks to Cambridge Councillor Scott Hamilton for bringing it to the attention of their council and to other councils in the neighborhood. And we'll be taking it to the region to see where it goes from there. Where am I going now? Bylaws. We have a couple of bylaws to enact, moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Freeman. I can't imagine there's any discussion. I'll take the vote beginning with Ward 1, please.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Councillor Bodley in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Councillor Vasek in favor. Hello?
Councillor Henry in favor, and I heard you, Jen.
Councillor Bonagor in favor.
And the mayor's in favor too. The bylaws are passed. And just before we sign off, I'd like to say a huge thank you for all those tuning in on YouTube to watch our city council meeting. But unfortunately now we must adjourn. And I'll look for a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Hanmer, second by Councillor Freeman. We'll begin the vote with Ward 1, please.
Councillor Hanmer in favor.
Councillor Bodley in favor.
Councillor Freeman in favor.
Councillor Vasek in favor.
Councillor Henry in favor.
Councillor Bonagor in favor.
And the mayor's in favor too. That carries unanimously. Thank you all very much for an evening of good work.
Hi, everyone.
Good night, everyone.